Naming the risk is only useful if the control fits it. The mistake here is to reach for the controls you already know, the pre-release tests, the sign-off, the periodic review, and assume that passing them means the system is safe. Those controls were built mainly for systems whose behavior changes only when you change them. An agentic control has to do three things: prevent what can be prevented, detect what cannot, and correct quickly when the system moves outside tolerance. Preventive controls come first, because the cheapest failure is the one that never happens. These are the limits built into the system, so a disallowed action is simply not available to it. The authority boundary that stops it acting above its remit, the permissions that keep it out of data and systems it has no business touching, the hard rule that certain actions are never taken without a person. The discipline is to prevent by design, not by instruction. A control that depends on the agent choosing to comply is not a preventive control. Prevention that works is built into what the system can do, not written into what it is told. But prevention can only reach the failures you can foresee. And the first risk of an agentic system is that some failures are unforeseen. So detective controls carry the weight, prevention cannot. These watch the system as it runs and surface the trouble prevention did not stop. Monitoring the tracks where the error and escalation rates are drifting, checks that flag an action outside the normal pattern, sampling that puts real outputs in front of a human reviewer. A detective control is only as good as the speed at which it notices. A monthly report that reveals a system drifted weeks ago has detected the problem far too late to matter. For a system that acts continuously, detection has to run close to the system's own clock. Detection without response is just an alarm no one answers, so corrective controls complete the set. When a detective control fires, something has to happen, and fast. The action that pauses the agent, tightens its boundary, routes its decisions back to people, or rolls back what it did before the damage spreads. The test of a corrective control is the time between the signal and the response. If a system can drift for a week before anyone acts, the correction is a formality. Every detective control has to be wired to a corrective one, so noticing and acting are part of the same mechanism, not separate hoops. Designed this way, you are no longer trying to guarantee the system never errs, which a probabilistic system cannot promise. You are building a layered response to the certainty that it sometimes will. Prevent the foreseeable, detect the risk quickly, correct before a single fault becomes a pattern. Match the mix and the cadence to the consequence the system carries. Assurance is not one activity but a division of labor, and many regulated enterprises already organize it through the three lines of defense. The first line is the business that owns the system and runs it. The second is risk and compliance, who set policy and oversee how the first line follows it. The third is internal audit, independent of both, reporting to the board. The structure is sound. Agentic systems do not overturn it. What they change is what each line has to be able to see, test, and challenge. The first line carries the largest change. The team that owns an agentic system is no longer operating a tool. It is supervising an actor that decides on its own. Owning it means watching its behavior as it runs, holding its boundary, noticing drift, and acting when a signal fires. The common failure is to treat the system as delivered and walk away. For a system that can drift untouched, ownership is continuous, or it is not real. The second line has to acquire something it often lacks: enough technical grasp of how these systems behave to challenge the first line meaningfully. A risk function that can only ask whether a policy document exists cannot oversee an agentic system, because the risk lives in how the system acts, not in whether a form was filed. The third line, internal audit, faces the sharpest shift in method. audit has long worked by sampling the past. For a system that acts continuously and changes as it goes, a once-a-year look at old decisions says little about whether the system is in control now. The reimagined third line audits the control system itself, increasingly with continuous access to evidence, not just an annual sample of history. And the real risk in practice is collapse. The team that builds this system also monitors it, also assures it, and the separation that lets a problem be caught by someone who did not create it quietly disappears. A central AI team can provide expertise and tooling, but it cannot be owner, overseer, and auditor at once. Keep the lines genuinely separate, each with the capability its role now demands. Next, we turn those controls and lines into an assurance program that runs.